In 1999, after having bought their dream home in Neenah, Wisconsin, Carol and her husband Ken moved into their new home. It was a big and beautiful house with a magnificent backyard. The rusty backyard hatch was never an inconvenience, and they had never worried about it until now. It is strange that after living in the same place for 10 years, they had never thought of opening the hatch. They had left it under the grass, and they simply forgot it existed. The couple was too busy taking care of their 3 children to think about that hatch. That's why the hatch kept closed for at least a decade. An amazing family discovery. It took them 10 years to find out what their backyard was hiding. Hollerswick's family came to Wisconsin because of a very good job offer, so they had to move from the small town where they lived in New Jersey. They didn't know if they would ever blend into the community at all, but they liked how quiet and welcoming the town of Neenah was. Although they got scared when they discovered what was hiding in their backyard under the forgotten hatch. With its 26,000 inhabitants, Neenah, at south of Appleton, was a rather nice, friendly, and quiet town, and the new neighbors ended up really enjoying their new town. The process of choosing a new house took them longer than planned. They visited many residences before deciding on the one they had now, and in fact, the saleswoman mentioned the existence of the hatch in the backyard, although they didn't think anything of it. The yard quickly became a favorite playground for the children when they bought the house. They would play and run around there all day, but never went near the rusty piece, which, in retrospect, was an excellent decision. The hatch was covered with hay and grass remaining hidden. And so the years passed and it was simply continued to be forgotten. It wasn't until about 10 years later, when in 2010, while doing maintenance on the garden, when the hatch finally came to their attention. The amount of weeds, branches, and everything else that accumulated during this time was lifted out of the way. The task took quite a while, and it took some effort to uncover it. After all this time, the family finally saw the hatch, and for the first time wondered what it was and what it was doing there. The first thing that came to their minds was that it was a tornado shelter, but they dismissed it immediately, as Neenah rarely presents this type of phenomena. They would never imagine what it really was, let alone that they would have it in their own backyard. They simply imagined that there was a small room underneath it, and that it most likely must have been empty and rusty. Their realtor had confirmed the existence of a room in the backyard, so when they were in the process of opening it up, they didn't expect anything out of the ordinary. Carol and Ken could never imagine that they would soon be the talk of the town. The doors gave away with some effort, even though they looked really flimsy. Once open, the couple peered in expecting to see something, but they just met an impenetrable darkness. Exploring that place was both terrifying and exciting. Once their eyes focused, they found a room full of water. They didn't understand why there was so much water there, but they wanted to find out. They got a pump to drain all the water from the place. Once it was empty, they were able to enter the room that had been hidden for so many years. However, the room was not empty as they had expected. It did not take them long to realize that the room was actually a nuclear shelter. The purpose of such shelters is to protect anyone from exposure to radiation, and they were designed so that people could stay there for a long time. But who would have built such a shelter? After some digging, they discovered that the room had been built by the first owner of the property, a man named Frank Panch, who was a physician. Panch began construction of the bunker in 1960 during a time of rising tensions caused by the Cold War. He thought it would be prudent to build a nuclear fortress to get sheltered in case of an attack. Only 2 years after its construction was completed, the Cuban Missile Crisis occurred. Tensions between the 2 major powers of the time, the Soviet Union and the United States, increased day by day. People felt in danger in their countries, and a new war was looming on the horizon. Although the city of Neenah was not a direct target for the Soviet Union's nuclear force, its proximity to other strategic points made the situation worrisome. Nearby cities, such as Minneapolis or Chicago, were considered likely targets, so Neenah was within the fallout zone. If things went bad, Panch was already prepared to simply go to his shelter and take cover. He took the instructions for its construction from the pamphlets the government itself printed in 1959, called the Family Fallout Shelter. The complex infrastructure had electricity, a telephone line, and a ventilation system, as well as all the necessary items and supplies for the occupants to stay, such as canned food and clothing. Carol and Ken found what was left of Panch's bomb shelter, along with all the items he had stored in the room, such as the flashlight, a bunk bed, and a collapsible toilet. If water had not deteriorated the shelter all these years, it would probably be as good as new. The fact that it was flooded meant something serious. If the water had managed to get through the seal of the shelter, it would be much easier for the radiation to do so that shelter would never have saved anyone. Among the things that were saved from the action of the water were some boxes in one corner completely intact. When they opened them, it was as if they had traveled back in time to the 1960s. There were old boxes of Kellogg's Corn Flakes, packages of chocolate chip cookies, and tins of crackers. There was also a Geiger counter, the device used to measure ambient radiation, along with hunting and first aid supplies. It was obvious that Panch had prepared well for the idea of an attack. They now had to figure out what to do with the entire discovery and decided it would be best to share their find with the community. So they donated everything in the shelter to the Neenah Historical Society. The story of the hatch was soon in all the headlines, as it was an unexpected and curious fact, considering that it took the owners of the place 10 years to discover it. When asked about it, they said that they would never have imagined that so many secrets and treasures were hidden there. They always thought it was a dirty and empty room. Interestingly, several such shelters have been discovered recently, and there are now companies dedicated to the construction of these enclosures. Many claim that you never know what could happen, so it is best to be prepared for the worst-case scenario.